Hey Misfits, it's time for another 1-minute review, and today we're taking a look at Lunar Rush by Dead Alive Games. Now this was actually really cool looking when we saw it. I think at Gen Con was when we saw it first, if I'm not mistaken, Tom. We liked the look of this. They explained to us how it worked. We managed to get a copy in, play it, and yeah, I'm going to tell you how it is. So Lunar Rush is an economic game. Now you're basically, the whole gist of it is you're each representing a corporation, and you're shipping stuff from the Earth to the moon, where your corporation's building up your own little base. You have your own little board here that represents your resources and your astronauts. The idea is stuff coming from the Earth is free. You don't have to produce it. You just dump it on here and it travels. Problem with that is, though, is there's 3 different routes to take to the moon. There's a fast, a medium, and a slow. Faster gets there quicker, and so on and so forth. However, you send less things with the fast route. And same goes for coming back from the moon, because what happens, you're going to be shipping stuff when you produce it on the moon back to Earth to make money, which is really the points of the game, is kind of your money. And it's the same thing. You have a quicker route that gets there in 1 turn. However, you could send less items on that route, and so on and so forth. The slow route, you could send a ton of items. It just takes way longer to get there. And even though it's like, what, technically 1, 2, 3 turns, it still takes, it seems like forever in this game. So what are you doing? You're sending items and equipment and stuff like that, these cubes, to the moon. And really, these cubes right here are the big dealios. So you have your astronauts, and it's kind of a worker placement game, point-based. Obviously, you win by how much points, but it's really the money you make is your points. You have astronauts on your little base here on the moon. And basically, every turn, and this kind of reminds me a little bit about like Dinosaur Island. You basically take your guys and you put them on different areas on your base. Everybody does it simultaneously, and basically produces stuff. They either produce resources, or they actually need to produce food so that their astronauts don't die. And you don't want them to die, because you lose a lot of points if they do. They got to, pay out the families and stuff. But you have all these little cubes, because cubes are very important. See, you start out with kind of your basic like layout, but as you go along, you pay these cubes, and then you upgrade them to these other versions of the same thing. They're just more, they obviously produce more, they're just better. And you'll slide these cards onto your board like that when you pay the required amount. And most of the time, the required amounts are various amounts of these different kind of cubes, and or energy or food. Or both, yeah. So you're basically, the whole crux of the game is you're trying to outpace your opponents by producing things, upgrading your base to make these resources, which are over here, to send back to Earth to get points to make money. They have these other wild card upgrades you can get. They're called gold cards, that have ones that are not intrinsic to your base, and basically put them to the side, and they do different things. They're usually more powerful. They just cost a lot more. That's not the entirety of the game, though. I mean, you'd have this racing mechanic where you're trying to produce stuff faster and get it down faster, while also getting stuff up to your base to help enhance it. But they also have a market, and that's where the interesting part comes in. So you have a market board right here. Now you have 4 different kinds of materials, although to be fair, it's really 2, because you basically have a lesser version of each. So like, this is a lesser version of the diamond, and this is a lesser version of the gold bar. And this market, what happens is, as you send items down, once you sell the items for money or points, this starts to basically devalue the items. So if I send a ton of this gem down there, this moves to the right and it slowly devalues the item. And that makes it even more interesting in terms of a race, because not only are you trying to outbeat your competitors in points, but now when you send your items down for points, it's devaluing it for everybody else. So you get a big payday, but everybody else kind of starts getting screwed, because they're losing points now in the transaction. They do have a critical point where if you reach, where it kind of starts resetting the bar a little bit, but in the meantime, that tracker is going to go down, and in some cases lose there's like a ton of point difference between the starting and the mid. And it goes down rapidly, because it's for 1 for each item generally, unless there's like a big bulk transaction. So that creates a very tense thing, because you're trying, and to even get the routes, I didn't even mention the bidding system. So to even get the routes, it isn't just a matter of first, second, third. It's a matter of, you actually have a bidding system. You have these cards that have numbers on them. Everybody puts one down secretly in the beginning, and they bid on these routes. So the bidding system actually plays a big part in it, because even though you have these different numbers, and the highest number does go first, the problem is, every time you use a bidding card, the number is actually taken out of your points. And that escalates as well. So say I really want to go first, and I put a 5 card down, beating everybody else. I'm going to be paying 5 points to even use that card. But towards the end, it multiplies that and gets even more expensive, making the end game even more tight because you're literally taking away from your points to bid on a route. So it adds this back and forth tension where you want a route, but it's going to cost you points to get the route. So how much value is in there of bidding on either a fast route or whatever kind of route you want to get and keep your engine flowing? You know what I mean? And there's been many times, right, Tom, where we were kind of like, well, it's the end of the game and I really want that route, but if I drop a 5, I'm going to be paying like 30 points to even get that route. And we're like, no, we're good.
Exactly. We're like trying to get the other person to get the higher number.
Oh, yeah. And it plays out very quickly. There's only 7 rounds, which might sound like a lot, but every round is very quick. It's like you put your stuff down, you do your thing, you move on. It moves very quick. And that's generally just the game at the end. Whoever has the most points wins. And you're going to get on this whole race of, sending stuff up here, upgrading your stuff, moving your guys around to make these to send on the ships, which will go down for you to sell and back and forth. And so you'll just keep going back and forth, moving these along the route. Now, this makes a very, very interesting game. And I will add some caveats to that, but I like this game. It is a fun game. It is an economic game, but it is not a heavy Euro type economic game. It moves very quickly and very fast, and it comes together in a nice package. That said, and I also like the market aspects a lot. And I'll just get right to it. This game is a solid 4 for me. This game is very much a solid 4 for me. I like the aspects of it. The components of the game are gorgeous. They did a really good job making this look like a deluxe game. It just plays very well. It's very smooth and it's very fast paced, and I like it a lot. The only caveat I will add is for players more than 2. What happens with the 2-player game, and I'll get right to the point, is that with a 2-player game, the market board doesn't really factor in like it doesn't. And that's a big part of this game because part of the whole back and forth is like, well, I need to bid on routes so that I can get my stuff there sooner so that I get the higher payout, compared to everybody else and kind of screw people over. Problem is, there's really only kind of 2 resources in this game. And if you have 2 players, well, guess what happens? What did we do, Tom?
Each of us went in one resource direction and we didn't have to spend as much in our moon base to upgrade.
Yeah. So what happens is, you basically, since you kind of essentially have 2 resources, because one's just a lower grade version of the other, you basically choose one of the resources and take that path. You don't have really the time or the resources to invest in the other resource to try to mess with your opponent because it takes a lot to kind of get up to the higher end version of that resource. So what happens is, like, I went for diamonds, he went for the gold bars, and so the market literally meant nothing to us outside of we didn't affect each other in any way. If you're not competing for the market, you're basically just kind of doing your thing. So, for 2 players only, it's a 3. I don't really think it was meant to be a 2-player game. That's why they give you the option and say maybe have an AI player. If you play this game, do yourself a favor, play it with 3 or 4 people, and it will hum. This game will be awesome and it will hum, and you'll see kind of how it just flows together. If you play with 2 players, it still plays the same, but I think you're missing out on kind of a crucial aspect of the game that is built into it. You know what I mean? But it is a lot of fun. 3 to 4 players, a solid 4-star. The feel of it, the gameplay is all just awesome. If you want to kind of, I hesitate to use lighter economic game, but it is kind of lighter compared to other stuff you might play. Definitely check it out. It's an awesome game. Dead or Alive Games, guys, did an awesome job. Check it out, guys. This is definitely one for your collection. Till then, of course, as always, make sure you keep your astronauts alive because really, once they die off, you got to pay the families. It's a big pain in the butt. Until then, as always, game on, guys.